Recording, that's a good sign. So we'll start seeing the participant list, just we'll see that fill in. And I see Brooke Hessling has jumped on. Is that a relative, a wife?
Ah, geez, my wife logged in.
Uh-oh. You better be on your best behavior then.
I know.
Welcome everyone. As you pop in, we're going to give everyone a couple minutes. Feel free to type into the chat just to let us know that you're hearing this and that you're seeing all of our faces on the screen. I see now the chats are flowing in. Nice. Awesome. All right, we'll get going in probably like 1:03. Clear audio, says Carson. All right. And if Colin's background is bothering anyone, fireworks display behind him, you can type that into the chat as well. So Ryan, what's our goal here? We want to get up to 100 attendees, right?
Yes.
All right, we're at 76. 77, 78. Oh my goodness. We're on like crazy. Give it another minute or two and then we'll get going. So you guys excited to watch golf this weekend? What's on the sports docket? There's not a whole lot to watch, I guess, outside of golf.
Waiting for baseball to figure it out. Right there.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Golf has been fun to watch.
Chris Kaufman saying Premier League. All right, there you go. Soccer fans. I'm not that into soccer. I don't know about you guys. Colin, you watch soccer?
Can't say I do.
No? Your hair right now looks like you could be playing in the Premier League, though.
I got some good COVID hair going on right now. It's been a little bit since I've joined a bar.
You trim the sides yourself?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's an at home. Just haven't touched. I haven't ventured out to scissors. So.
Yeah, I had to give myself a haircut because it was getting bad, and I knew this webinar was going to be coming up on June 18th, so I had to give myself a couple weeks in case I really butchered it. All right, I guess we'll get going now. We're getting close to that 100 attendee list, goal, I should say. So I'm going to welcome everyone in. Thanks for jumping on the webinar today. The title is The Value of the Secondary Market. I'm Mike Rudner. I'm the VP of Business Operations for Sports Business Solutions. You might have seen me on some other webinars in the past. Really excited to have this conversation around the secondary market. It's not something we typically talk about, so I think this conversation is going to be really different from some of the webinars we've had in the past. So really excited to have this discussion. If you've got questions for any of the panelists, feel free to shoot it into the Q&A. And we encourage people to be chatting along the way. So if you want to have conversations with other people or you've got advice for different people in the industry on the secondary market, feel free to type that into the chat button. I'm broadcasting from New York, so I apologize ahead of time if there's some crazy background noise. I'm going to mute when I'm not speaking, so hopefully I remember to unmute. But it might happen along the way where I'm talking and no one can hear anything, and that's because I've still muted. So without further ado, I want to introduce Ryan Kindt. Ryan works at Tickets for Less. He's the director of partnerships there at Tickets for Less. And Tickets for Less was kind enough to sponsor this webinar. So thank you for to the folks at Tickets for Less, to Justin and Adam at Tickets for Less as well. I know Ryan's broadcasting at Justin Kirk's house right now. Ryan, welcome onto the webinar. And as I welcome you in, why don't you tell people who aren't familiar with Tickets for Less what you guys do over there?
Thanks, Mike. We're really excited to be partnering with you guys at SBS. You guys have been great to work with so far, and we're excited about this next hour and some of the other stuff we'll have coming later. So also real quick, want to thank Dan and Colin for jumping on and sharing their expertise both on the pro and collegiate side. I know they both have some really great insights that we're excited to go through over the next little bit. So for those of you that don't know, Tickets for Less, or TFL as we refer to it, we're a top 1% secondary market resale company based out of Kansas City. We have partnerships of all sizes in professional sports, collegiate sports, with venues and many other places where we're able to help our partners achieve their goals by coming alongside and creating a transparent partnership. So we do that in a lot of different ways, mostly by coming along your sales team, extending your sales reach into every secondary website, making sure your tickets are distributed anywhere that they can be, including our own website, by maintaining price integrity, analytics and data support, and so on more. And so we started in 2004 when our owner, Dan Ruin, founded TFL. And since then, it's grown to 35 employees, all who have expertise in different areas. Some who have been on the secondary market during their career, some like myself or Justin Kirk or Adam Rosbach, who have been on the primary side and understand what it's like to work in a ticket office daily, as well as marketing and pricing and data experts all throughout our company, all with the same goal, to try to build a great partnership to help our partners achieve their goals. So that's what we're doing day in, day out. It's been working. Our approach to how we're working with our partners, we've seen 25% year-over-year growth consistently, and even in tough times during COVID, have been able to expand partnerships, take on new partnerships. So the only pitch I'll give today, very simple: wherever you fall in the secondary market, we'd love to talk to you, get to know you and your goals and your organization, and see how we can help. Because if we're all going in the same way, you're going to get great value out of your secondary market. So
That was great, Ryan. And one of the things that I'd say, we were excited about this partnership with you guys because I think it's a very similar message that we have in our marketing, and that we've all worked in business. Bob obviously was a VP at the Phoenix Suns, Josh worked for him at the Suns, and Kevin at the Jaguars. And so, both companies, we have that experience working for the team side, and then you take it over to the vendor side. And I think that adds some perspective. I think that's how you guys stand out. So excited to hear more from you, Ryan. And then, of course, as we continue this partnership, we'll hopefully have a blog written by you guys at some point later this year, and then maybe another webinar. So everyone that's listening, stay tuned for more stuff from Tickets for Less. Ryan, before you were at Tickets for Less, you worked for this guy, Colin Hargis, over at NC State. Colin's the Senior Associate Athletic Director at NC State. He oversees marketing and ticketing. Colin, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you. Glad to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to join you guys and discuss this topic and help answer any questions and provide some insights from our perspective on the collegiate side of it.
All right. What's your over-under on insights that you're going to provide? I'm going with
I go 1.
1. So you're going to take it under on the 3.5.
Yeah. So listen, if there's one key takeaway, right, you learn something, one thing a day. That's a good day right there. So we'll set the.
We have to get a sponsorship with FanDuel or something, so we can start to set over-unders on these webinars, and people can bet on insights that you get throughout. So something to keep in mind. If Jason Stein, if you're listening, write that down for a future thing for us to do. And then last but not least, Dan Hessling over at the Texas Rangers. Dan's the director of season ticket sales. Dan, I know that you told us ahead of time you might have to jump off if Rob Ranford gives you a call, because I know he's consulting with you to try to get baseball back on the field. So, Dan, welcome on to the webinar.
Thank you, Mike, and everyone at SBS who's been obviously a great partner of ours on different projects, on staffing, recruitment, and as well training. So appreciate the opportunity to speak a little bit today.
Nice. Well, thank you, Dan. I know you're in the office in Texas. I think you're the only one of us that's in an office, right?
Yes, so we returned to office this week, but we've been on and off for pretty much last couple of months with half of our sales staff, but half of them working from home remotely. But this week we have returned fully staffed and hosting people to show off our beautiful new venue.
Yeah, well, I believe that unfortunately forces you to see Nick Richardson every day, your colleague at the Rangers. I know Nick's going to be on a webinar next week, so if you want to hear more from Nick, I don't know why you would, but if you do, certainly jump on our next week.
Yeah, it's not the worst thing. I'm office right next to him, so he can probably hear me speaking right now.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think he needs some advice on how to play Words with Friends because he's had a rough record against me. So maybe you can help him out with that while you guys are in the office together.
Well, it's tough when he can't respond unless he types in the chat, which we may see him do here shortly.
That's true. Well, we can see he said, hey, so he's a wordsmith already. Okay, here comes that trash talk that I was expecting. There's more from Nick. Well, let's get into the conversation. Like I mentioned to kind of kick this webinar off, we don't have a lot of conversations around the secondary market. It's typically around the primary market, how to sell tickets to season ticket holders and group tickets and club seats. And so, I'm excited for this conversation. I think it's going to be a unique one. And it's not something that I'm familiar with. So I hope Colin provides maybe more than one insight because I could always learn something from this discussion as well. I guess, Dan, I'm going to start it with you. You guys are opening a new stadium, hopefully opening a new stadium. At some point, maybe fans will come into the stadium this year. How have you guys approached the secondary market? And maybe answer it pre-COVID versus current situation. What sort of value do you see in the secondary market? How does it complement your current efforts?
Yeah, certainly. Well, obviously, we want to find partners that align with our strategy. I think that obviously every team has their own importance as far as what they're trying to accomplish on the primary and how they find partners that will align with that strategy. And for us specifically, things certainly changed when we opened up or when we're opening up a new venue, as you said, obviously pretty soon here. But that being said, is that we obviously want to find partners that understand the market, that align with what our strategy is. Obviously, we want to sell as many tickets as we can, right? And so getting butts and seats, getting as many people in our venue is obviously important. But one of the biggest things that we try to do is maintain price integrity. And so when we're finding those partners, we want someone who's present, available, will come and visit with us face-to-face, meet with us weekly or bi-weekly on conference calls to discuss how we're maintaining that price integrity. And then in turn, the volume of tickets that we're able to sell in the secondary market, being in the Metroplex, a top 5 media market, we obviously have the ability to sell more tickets on the secondary than a lot of other cities. And so that being said, a lot of those things weigh in. And not to be too long-winded with my answer here, but those are some of the main things that we obviously look like. Partners like Tickets for Less that have worked with us for a number of years and understand what our strategy and how we can accomplish it at the end of the day provides a lot of value from the secondary standpoint.
Oh, I'm going to pass that question back to you. Dan gave a really robust answer, so he set the bar pretty high for you to provide an insight or two.
All right, well, here, we'll give it a crack. Yeah, I'd say, our philosophy and our approach to the secondary market has really evolved over the last probably 2-3 years, maybe even 4 years. I think college athletics in general, we've dipped our toes into the secondary market and try to understand how we can benefit ourselves, our primary sales, and our fan base. But really, I think that has, come on to be a more prominent part of all colleges. And then, not to speak for all athletic departments, but, specifically looking at NC State and what we've done over the last 3 to 4 years, we've begun to really pivot from just the transactional sale and building that into just our overall primary sales, goals and revenue streams to really looking to, similar to what Dan said, is how does it align with what we're trying to do? And how can we acquire insights and data, into the secondary market that then ultimately allows us to be smarter in our primary goal setting, in our revenue generation, and, in return also, I think adds value to our season ticket holders and to our fans in general. If you can find, similar to what Dan said, if you can find the right partners to work with, and the right people out there who work with you not to just move quantity and volume, but can really stabilize the market. And that again leads to your primary sales, holding their own weight, working together, and then ultimately the data that you get back from it. I think that's been one of the key things for us as we've approached the secondary market, and the evolution with how we've attacked our revenue streams, revenue generation, and just overall sales planning is the data and the insights and the analytics that you can gain from it. That to me is crucial and is a key part of everything that we do. So again, same thing as we look at the secondary market, we've looked at the partners and the people that we've worked with, and helped us in this space, inclusive of Tickets for Less. We've really valued the data and the insights that can then come into our primary side, help us with just overall primary pricing and revenue goals and sales timelines, things of that nature, to just again understand that free market as opposed to just the primary side of the market.
So you mentioned the data and insights, Colin, and I think that's a good jumping off point. What types of information are you receiving, whether it's from Tickets for Less or other secondary partners, that you're utilizing and then therefore making decisions based off of? Do you have a couple examples that you can pinpoint?
Yeah, I think the price point and the sales timelines are one of the key things that we've really paid attention to, as well as price points within the stadium. I think all of us, we've tried, as whether you're a sport, professional team or a college athletics department, whomever you are, I think we've all tried to be scientific to a degree to analyze and optimize our stadiums. And that's something that we've really focused on at NC State, is optimizing our stadium. At the end of the day, you have a finite number of seasons, you have a finite number of events that you can sell, and that's it. So you have to be able to optimize that. You can't price it too high, you can't price it too low. So what is the sweet spot there? So as we've done many case studies and dove into the scientific procedures behind it and the data sides behind it, the secondary market has really allowed us to see what the market is actually doing. Again, you go back to what is that free market? What is the market doing from a price point standpoint? Where are the fans valuing tickets more so within the stadium to allow us better insights to understand where we may be off or where we should adjust some of our single game pricing or potentially season ticket pricing, as well as the timelines. If you look at it from a sales timeline, when do the consumers, when do fans want to consume, whether it's a single game ticket or multiple games, whatever. But if you can watch the flow of sales on the secondary market, and again, especially I think, or specifically in the college space, where our timelines haven't been a full 365 full menu year round. We're a little bit more of the traditional. You have your season timeline, you have your mini pack timelines, you have your single games, and we've tried to evolve that and grow that and become full menu as much as possible. But again, some of those insights that you do see, that when you see certain games or that tickets are moving during non-traditional sales months or calendars, it allows us to look at that. We may not make every single decision and react right away to those trends, but it at least provides us some insight so that we can make more educated and scientific determinations and plans as we look at what our sales calendar is, again, to realize when can we capitalize and how do we optimize the revenue that we have coming in.
Right, that made a lot of sense, Colin. Anything on your end? I know Colin's at NC State. He's probably primarily selling basketball and football. Dan, you're working on baseball on the professional side. How are you using the data that you receive from the secondary partners of yours to make decisions, whether it's on pricing or strategy or anything? Just how are you using that data right now?
Yeah, certainly. And very well said by Colin. I mean, obviously I'll elaborate a little bit on kind of what we do, but very well put. We have our own data and analytics team. Katie Morgan, who I'm sure is on this webinar, is, heads that department, and she does a fantastic job. But in turn, what you're seeing, and probably what has evolved the most in the secondary market and the partnerships that teams have with ticket brokers, is that we're sharing a lot more data, we're receiving a lot more data. And so Colin hit the nail on the head by saying, basically, those are the things that then it's supplemental data to what we already have in store or in-house, I guess, so to speak. And so we can see what we're selling tickets for on the primary side, and maybe where we might not be capturing as big of a margin as we had anticipated in certain price scales or locations. But the willingness of our ticket partners, our brokers, sharing that data and those data points, whether it be, the average ticket price that they're selling within any given location, what margins they may have based on the price they originally paid, and in turn, maybe the sell-through on any given game, are all things that are important when we're evaluating maybe what price we're having on the primary market. And another thing, I wanted to answer the question, Robert Goodman looks like he typed in a chat here, and so I think it's applicable here to go ahead and answer that question. He says, how does the secondary market help with price integrity? It all goes back to aligning yourself with the proper partners. Your partners need to know what strategy that the organization has in place. So therefore, if you have a ticket partner that is buying a bulk load of seats in a particular seat location that they might not be pricing accordingly on the secondary market, what that does then is undercuts the primary market. So if Ryan and his team, which they certainly don't do, we've evaluated the price points they're selling various price scales at, and so they've maintained that price integrity for us as a partner, is that if they were to buy 2,000 seats in a particular seat location and go below what the season ticket price was selling for on average, then that would be problematic overall to our strategy. And so how you maintain that price integrity is by aligning yourself with partners that are not racing to the bottom, so to speak, or finding a way to lower their ticket prices to undercut what you're doing on the primary market.
Gotcha, that makes sense. And Ryan, on your end, before we leave the data and analytics portion, because I find that to be really interesting, especially since this is constantly evolving. What are you guys doing at Tickets for Less to sort of stand out in the field? Are you providing certain data points that maybe other secondary market partners aren't providing?
Yeah, I think it goes back to Dan's point of aligning yourself with your partners and figuring out what's important to them. What's important to Dan and what's important to Colin may be mostly the same, but there's going to be different things that they find valuable. So we're honestly just trying to listen. We're trying to hear what's valuable to our partners and what we can provide to them. Because to Dan's point, you have to maintain that price integrity. Obviously, distribution is very important, but as soon as that price integrity isn't there anymore, you're training people to wait to buy at a lower price. And you can't do that, whether you're on the primary or the secondary. You have to create urgency. You have to create demand. And it's impossible to do without aligning yourself and listening to your partners. So for us, we're always following data points that we have. We're always trying to get better and listen. Our partners can log in and see what is going through with their data points. And so, it's always something that we're trying to get better on, and honestly, just listening to those that we know, and also pulling from, my time on the primary side, or Justin's time, or anyone else, where we can just come in and make sure that people know that we want your market to grow as more people are looking to buy tickets. We see that 7 days out in most places is when people are looking to buy tickets the most. And in a lot of cases, prices are dropping dramatically 7 days out. So how do we hold that, and how do we hold or increase prices with our partners to where people aren't waiting till the last minute and it's not a race to the bottom, and then there can be data generated out of it, again, to Dan and Colin's point, where then our partners can work smarter with what they're doing on the primary side. That was a huge part of our sales planning when I was in DC. And so it has to be something where our partners see the value and can get it in real time, or when they need it, so that way they can continue to make decisions frequently and quickly.
That's great, Ryan. I'm gonna steer the conversation in a different direction. I'm gonna go with Colin, because I think, Colin, you probably have the most experience working in this world among all of us. I know growing up as a kid, when you heard secondary market, it was typically the guy at the stadium who's trying to sell you his tickets that he bought a bunch from the Mets, let's say, and he's moving his tickets day up. I think as even since I've worked in the sports world, really since 2007, the perception around the secondary market back then was it was kind of a sleazy place to be. And certainly, it's not the case anymore. How do you think that perception has evolved really since you started working in the sports world, whether it's been at South Florida or NC State?
Yeah, there's definitely been a change and an evolution with that mindset. And, you know, even from, again, from an employee and from an organizational standpoint at a university, our perception has, you know, changed and evolved over the last couple of decades. The consumer nowadays is smarter than they've ever been. And, you know, they have the ability to look and to purchase. And you see it both in good and bad. I'll preface that. The smart consumers are going to shop around. They're going to visit websites. They're going to understand that they have options when they go to purchase. And that wasn't the case even a decade ago, probably even 5 years ago, even less, you know, to a less extent. So I think for us as an organization and from a department standpoint, we've had to realize that, you know, you always heard you can't be on the outside. You know, the secondary market's out there, it's happening. You got to find your way to be a part of it. And if you're on the outside of it, you're sitting on the sideline, you're missing out. And we slowly come around. And again, I think our approach has evolved to it. And I think from our standpoint now, again, how we view it is we can learn from it, we can be a part of it. And then even from our fan standpoint, they realize that there are safe places to purchase. You also see, unfortunately, many fans who get burnt based on fake websites and fake things out there. And, you know, they have an awful experience and you try to help them, you know, in our staffs on game days and whatever, you know, try to educate them. So I think the consumer has become smarter in understanding that they don't always have to come to the primary sale. But again, back to our original discussion that, you know, if the primary market is in line with the secondary market and all things are equal, you're going to have consumers, you're going to have fans and donors that want to go to either or, you know, and one might have a preference of the primary, one might have a preference of, I'm always going to buy from X website. I'm always going to buy from Tickets for Less, or whichever, I'm going to go to Craigslist, you know, or whatever it may be. But they understand where they can purchase their tickets from. They understand how they can get to an event and they have options. So for us, it's that evolution that we've come around to understanding, okay, how do we put ourselves into this market? How do we educate our fans? How do we allow them to understand these are the safe places to interact and to exchange and to purchase? And if we are sold out, here's what you can look at. So I think the mindset and the approach has changed. And again, the college space has always been a little bit slower to come along at times. And I think this is one of the examples that, you know, again, you go back 5, 6, 7 years ago, even there's probably few and far between from, you know, college athletic departments, you know, truly having these type of conversations. And I think slowly, you know, everyone's realized the benefits of it, both from what we've already talked about, you know, from looking at your revenue, looking at your analytics and how do you stabilize and how do you, you know, optimize, but then also what are the benefits that it also can bring your fans. And, you know, and when the fans can see the benefits of it. And again, I think the prime example is when you have a stabilized market, you don't have your season ticket holder sitting there saying, well, man, why am I buying the season ticket when I can get it for $5? You know, and the average price, you know, for the entire season is $200 less. Again, you're creating the value and you're helping them by doing our part on the primary side. So I think it really has become, you know, that thought process and that mindset of understanding it's not a bad, scary place. It's not the back alley in Queens, you know, trying to find, you know, a couple of tickets with a guy holding the sign. It's, you know, it's an intricate marketplace. And again, in this day and age, it's all one marketplace. It's just understanding the benefits of it and how do you best align and integrate yourself with that marketplace to benefit you, you know, as an organization, as well as, again, benefit your consumers, your fans.
And real quick, if I can jump in.
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
You know, Colin mentioned value and holding your season ticket holder value. Like, obviously, that's got to be very important. And we've talked about a transparent process that goes the same direction. But I think it's important to remember that value isn't just the primary versus the secondary, right? Like, yes, you have to have value and you have to do that, but value is anything that's competing for that discretionary dollar, that fan's time or interest. So going to the bar, going to the restaurant, staying home, watching on your comfy couch with a nice big screen TV, there has to be value around the product. And certainly there's going to be bargain shoppers. One thing I've done with some of our partners is say, hey, type your organization name into Google, followed by tickets, and see where you fall on the list. And some of our partners are a little bit higher and some are a little bit lower. But there's a chance they may never make it to your primary site. And so you have to have a strategic and transparent partnership that's going to not allow someone else to create what that value is. Because if it's too low, you're not creating demand. If it's too high, you may be pricing people out. There's certainly going to be people that are shopping around and want to look and want to see, but what if they don't? You know, and so being smart and transparent and having those collaborative relationships I think will, to Colin's point, continue to drive value not only for your season ticket holders, but help show people there's value and excitement in coming to your games.
Hey, Mike, let me jump in real quick because there's a question that just popped up that relates to this whole thing, and Ryan to chime in a little bit as well, and just asked about NC State and if we're integrated with StubHub or Vivid Seats and one of those, and how does that all come into play. So to answer that question, we are integrated with StubHub, and for us that creates that direct fan-to-fan marketplace for our season ticket holders and our fans to transact. So the secondary market in that entirety, the StubHub integration is a part of it, but the marketplace in and of itself is an entire kind of ecosystem. And our integration with StubHub, the primary benefit for us, again, is that fan-to-fan secure marketplace, so that specifically if an NC State fan or whomever is looking to purchase, they know that they're buying a verified and secure ticket within our specific, almost primary world. It's a verified transaction. Anything done with per se a partner, Tickets for Less, or anybody else for that matter, it doesn't necessarily impact that or change that integration and that dynamic. And again, I think Ron can probably speak to it from the Tickets for Less or from his side of the world of maybe how that all comes together. But from an organizational standpoint, from our standpoint, the integration lives there. And again, the primary benefit for that is it provides that secure fan-to-fan marketplace. So again, a season ticket holder looking to resell their ticket, or a single game buyer, again, that the barcode itself is authenticated, so forth and so on. So it's an authenticated direct transaction of sorts.
Yeah, and I think to Colin's point, it's certainly there's a lot of benefits to your season ticket holders. When I was at NC State, I had a ton of benefits. People close their tickets quickly, and then when they go through StubHub, it allows them to pick what price they want to list. And I think that's kind of where we come in is, hey, we're helping maintain that price integrity and helping that fan maximize the price that they can list their tickets for. And then from there, it's not just on StubHub. There's plenty of other secondary websites that we have partnerships as well, where we want to maintain that maximum reach and distribution for our partners. Some people may not buy on StubHub. They may go to Vivid. They may go to SeatGeek. They may go to our website. So we're broadcasting to every secondary site to help expand sales reaches. It may not be something that a team can do or has time to do. It may not have the staff to be able to do it. So we can come along and provide some extra incentives on top of what they're already seeing through partnerships with StubHub and whoever else it may be, to make sure that tickets are in the most places they can be at the right price, so that way when a fan looks, we can capitalize on making sure that your tickets are being seen when people are looking for them, and you're able to make sure, not only to Dan's point earlier, butts are in seats, but we're helping generate that data and maintaining the price.
Yeah, I'll chime in real quick too to what these guys said. I mean, it's because from my perspective, it's a lot different being in baseball, right? We have 80 some games that we're selling. And then on top of it, with a new building, we have concerts, other third-party events that now maybe weren't a part of the game previously in our previous stadium. But when you talk about selling 80 plus games in our venue, is the difficulty is maintaining that price integrity for every single game. Playing a team on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night obviously won't sell as well as your premium games or premier games on weekends or opening day for that matter. But the biggest value add that we can have when you start partnering with certain people is that you're going to have the ability to maintain that high price, so that when a season ticket member is selling their tickets through all the different channels that Ryan spoke about, they're selling it for above maybe what they spent. And so then they start recovering some of those funds that they had used to pay for the tickets. And then in turn, they see another, an added value thing when they start doing things like that. So.
Dan, I was gonna pass it back to you because I think Brandon, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your last, Brandon Goebel asked a really good question that is a good transition to what this discussion is. As far as internally, how do you train your reps to weed out the brokers that you don't work with and that you don't partner with? I've heard stories over the years of, a sales rep is someone's calls to buy a bunch of season tickets and they think they're making a huge sale, but in reality, they're selling to a broker that they shouldn't be selling to. So how do you guys handle associations right now internally?
I think it takes a lot of experience, especially when you're talking about sales associates or sales representatives that are getting their start in the business. You really have to educate them on it and show them what are some of the red flags that you may find. But as far as policing the secondary, a lot of it comes from your partners. People you're doing business with, they may see inventory that shows up on the secondary as well. And so you're able to make sure that the tickets are getting in the right hands of the right people. But to go back to what you asked, Mike, is that it's a constant process of education. There is no way that you're going to have every single ticket be in the proper hands when you're selling them. I mean, there will be some brokers that do not sign an agreement with you and they buy a one-off group night or a season ticket membership, and you find out after you get certain sales data to see that they are a ticket broker that you're not working with exclusively, or however many that you're working with. And so it's a constant challenge. Our staff here does a fantastic job of it. They constantly know what to look for. There's any number of items. And so we just continue that communication with them, and they will come and see me. So right now I handle our partners, all of our partnerships. And so if they see an account that may raise a red flag due to an address or due to a domain for email address or whatever it may be, an out-of-state address, they will come to me directly or email me. And then our whole leadership staff really does a great job of making sure that we're constantly training our staff what warning signs you're looking for. Because again, to go back to it, if you have all these other brokers that are purchasing tickets that aren't one of the few consolidated accounts that you're working with, it takes away from the value from your partners as well in the secondary market, because those are the brokers, the ones that are not partnered with you, that slip through the cracks, that are going to be selling tickets below that face value here and there. And it's more difficult to manage and maintain that price integrity. So it takes away from the value that you have with your current partners. So I think it's a little bit of both as far as who's policing it.
That makes sense. And Colin, on your end, do you guys, since you oversee marketing as well, do you guys have a separate secondary market strategy? And are you marketing differently on the secondary market than you are on the primary side?
We don't have an independent secondary market marketing plan or strategy per se. But what we've been able to do is, over the last few years, and again, in our world, we have a 360 touch point plan of sorts as we look at our contacts and how we try to engage and interact with our fans and donors and season ticket holders. But long story short, that any of the data that we actually receive from the secondary market and those buyers, they're all built into our database and they all come into our environment. We're able to understand who they are and how they buy and what they're purchasing. And through that, they go into our normal marketing streams and in our engagement funnels. So again, whether it's single game buyers or whichever it may be. So it's integrated into our overall engagement strategy. So, everything feeds into our CRM platform from there. Our reps are engaging with them. We're understanding what they're purchasing. And I think it is interesting because, Dan can speak to it probably as well, but the secondary market buyer is a little bit different typically from your primary buyer. And so while we try to engage them, at least from what we've seen, while we try to engage them and foster those relationships, if they're not a continuous buyer with us or an existing donor per se, it's a little bit different of a relationship. So we put them into our normal marketing engagement funnel, but we also understand that they're a little bit different segment. And again, those are the buyers that may be looking to spend 4 times what the normal price is, because they know specifically the one game and the one seat location that they want to go to, and they value that so much more than the overall either season-long experience or whichever it may be. So again, that's going to be a different type of conversation, as well as the conversion of them, or the maturation of that type of account through the life cycle is going to be a little bit different from the traditional single game buyer or multi-game buyer that you might have come through on the primary side. It's going to be a different process, because for that buyer, they know, hey, I can spend hypothetically $2,000, buy these 4 seats and sit on the 40-yard line, and that's all I want. And if you can't sell me that as the primary, then I'm done. I don't need to engage with you. But again, for us, we understand that they're still engaging with us as a department, as a venue, as a sports and entertainment option. So how do we still build that relationship? So long-winded, but they come into our normal marketing cycle and engagement cycle, but based on the filters, we understand that they're that those accounts or those buyers are coming through on the secondary side, and it's a little bit conversation and engagement as we reach out to them and or try to grow that relationship.
Sounds good, Colin. I appreciate the insight there as we started off with the over under on there. I think you're over one, so you beat your over under. A couple more questions that I want to ask you guys, and then let's leave it open to the Q&A on the final 20 minutes. Ryan, this first one's for you, and then the next one we'll go to Colin and Dan. Ryan, I know you've worked on the primary side. You worked at NC State with Colin prior to Tickets for Less, and I think at Liberty before that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. So from your experience on the primary side and now on the secondary side, what are a couple of things that you wish you did differently, knowing what you know now, if you were on the primary side again?
It's a good question. Yeah. I've learned a lot since I've been at TFL, and that was one of the goals of coming here was, I understood the primary side and understood what it took to be successful in that role. I wanted to come to a great company that could help me see tickets differently. And I knew TFL being a great partner, their visions aligned with mine and how we wanted to build tickets and help our partners. My why, since I've been in tickets, is pretty simple. I want to help people experience sports like I've gotten to. I was very fortunate growing up to get to experience sports in Tampa. There's minor league baseball, the Bucks, the Lightning when the Rays showed up. So I've gotten to experience sports, in unique ways. I was the kid that cried when I did Field of Dreams and couldn't stay on the field with the minor league baseball teams. And so, I wanted to make sure that I could help people do that. And we're able to do that in this role. So the two biggest things I would say, we've kind of hit on it, so I won't hit on it as much as, you have to have a secondary market plan. It can't just be the Wild West of it's out there and, we've sold tickets and great. I think I was guilty of thinking about that in that way of great, that partner has that ticket now. It's up to them on what they can make. But really, forming that transparent partnership to where people are going to work together and hold value. Because I think sometimes in that strategy, I was guilty at NC State of having, big games that probably weren't the price they should have been. And so the second market companies spend a lot of money in marketing to get people to go to their websites, just as the primary side spends a lot of money to market to get people to go to their websites. So not only, formulating that plan and making sure you understand how many tickets you want to have out there, who has your tickets, which I'll hit on again in a second, but what types of tickets are out there? Are you setting floors? Are you having, as Dan mentioned earlier, regular calls to evaluate these plans to understand where you're at based on what's happening? Maybe you have a game that you didn't think was a big game, and you decide a player who's injured comes back and that's the first game, or it winds up being a top 25 matchup in a collegiate atmosphere that you didn't expect. So having a more detailed plan, just as you would for season tickets, honestly, if I'm ever back on the primary, it'd be part of my sales plan, a big part of my sales plan, to understand just as in detail who and what we're doing and how we're going. And then second, I think maybe the biggest thing I've learned is who has your tickets is just as important as how many tickets are in the market. I used to think, hey, we have X amount of tickets out on the secondary. That's X percentage of our capacity, which means that we're not going to flood a market and we're good. And yet there were still games that struggled. But coming here and seeing it from this side, who has your tickets is really important. Anyone can sell you the lip service of they want to be a partner, they want to be transparent, they want to, formulate to hold your price, but do they have that expertise and experience and resources to be able to do that? A lot of things that I've seen at NC State that weren't very clear to me when our market was going down are very clear to me now as to why. So, making sure you're working with the right partners, you're evaluating that, you have the right policies set up to maintain that value. Quickly, I think those are the two biggest things that I've seen since I've been here.
Gotcha. And for Dan and Colin, this will be our last question, and we'll leave it open to the Q&A. So if you're listening and you've got questions, I know Barry sent one in. We've got a bunch in the Q&A queue. Feel free to type those in now. Dan, I'll start with you, and then Colin, you can back them up. When it comes to the secondary market, does ownership even get involved? I mean, a lot of owners, and in Colin's case, even the athletic directors, they don't have a good grasp on even what the secondary market is. So when you're making decisions on who you're partnering with, are you educating ownership? Are they getting involved, or are you typically making those decisions on your secondary partners at your level, or maybe the VP level?
Yeah, so the way it works specifically with the Rangers is, since I handle all of our partnerships, I will put a proposal together for our SVP of Ticket Sales and Service, Paige Farragut. She's been in the industry for over 20 years and been with the Rangers specifically for that length of time. She in turn will provide all of the information to our Chief Revenue and Marketing Officer, Joe Januszewski, and then he will present that to ownership as far as, this is our plan. This is kind of how we see things developing, especially this year and long term. You have to have a long-term vision to be able to present. So that is their really involvement with it. It's, hey, what is the plan? What is the process? They definitely have an understanding of the secondary market, since it's such a big component of what we do and how we operate. But at the same time, it's not, an everyday thing. It's here's the proposal. And they basically write off and say, yeah, that sounds good. Let's move forward with it.
Yeah, I'd agree. I won't dive in too much more on that, but it's very similar, I think, in the college space from, the departments I've worked in with the athletic directors that I've been fortunate to serve under. It's been a very similar process that, you bring together what it is and how it's going to benefit, in that transparency. Again, everyone has an understanding of the secondary market and what it can be and how it can benefit if done the right way. So, there's definitely, not to say involvement, but there's an education. It's providing the insight and the understanding of what the plan is and where we're heading with it. But again, whether you're talking ownership or an athletic director, it's one of 500 things on any given day that's popping up type thing. So it's a clear, concise conversation. And again, if you have a plan, action, what's the revenue upside? How does this benefit us, fans, so forth and so on? It's the general understanding and the education and the knowledge of it. And for the most part, there might be some Q&A back and forth, but it's the education process that here's the thought out plan and here's why we're choosing to go down this path, or with partner X or whomever it may be.
All right, thanks, Colin and Dan. I guess we're going to open it up to the Q&A. I guess for all three of you guys, if you want to check out the questions in the Q&A and pick on certain ones to answer. The first one I'll tee up to. I guess I'll go back to Colin. We were just talking about planning and strategy with everything that's going on with COVID right now and sort of the uncertainty around the college football season. What sort of impacts are you seeing on the secondary market related to the pandemic? Barry asked, what kind of refund policies are you putting in place, social distancing on the seating maps, anything around that as far as, what COVID has impacted you on the secondary side?
Yeah, so for us right now, it's a little challenging for us to, and for me to answer that, I'd say clearly we're at this point 3 months away from our season. So the overall impact is still, to me, honestly, a big question mark. The secondary market's still there. There's still transactions out there. I think the general consumer right now, and you look at it from a college football standpoint, is that's our next or our initial kind of sale or ticket that we have out there. I think there's still just a little bit of hesitation to a degree. People are chomping at the bit. Our season ticket holders are excited, our donors are excited, but as it translates then to the single game buyer or potentially that secondary market, I think there's still a little bit of that holding pattern just to see how it's all going to flush out. The one thing that, the way we've approached it and looked at it from NC State, we're not in a rush to have any, steadfast decision of this is what's definitely going to happen or not happen. Here's what we're doing with our stadium. We have plenty of time still to see what's going to happen. You look at where we've come in the last 3 months, and then again, you fast forward that we still have roughly 3 months before we kick off in Carter Finley Stadium. So there's plenty of time still for things to flush out. So, we're planning on our side for a lot of different scenarios. We're still anticipating having a full stadium. So I think what we'll eventually see is that once there's the confirmation and this is what's going to happen, I think you're going to see an instant, kind of just firework go off and it's boom, here it goes. So it's been a little bit of a holding pattern from us. We haven't seen much yet again, but we're still a ways out from, kind of our initial event or, where we'll be at, unlike, Dan to a degree with Major League Baseball kind of would be in the middle of a season to a degree, right?
Yeah. Right. And then on Dan's side, there's likely not going to be fans anytime soon. So I don't know if Dan, if you guys have done any sort of secondary market strategy right now, or is it like Colin said, it's so far away because A, you don't even know if there's going to be a baseball season, and B, if there is one, it doesn't look like there's going to be fans probably in the future.
Yeah, well, Colin articulated it so well. I mean, he talked about the uncertainty, obviously, that we're all in. I mean, it's every day that the landscape changes or things will kind of progress or take a step back. And so when you're talking about it from that standpoint, we're fortunate to be in a little bit different situation where, we've been a little bit more aggressive in Texas as far as reopening. And so we certainly do anticipate having fans in the stadium. To what degree? That is to be determined, but our governor has basically said, we can have 50% in our venue. And so that may change as we go 2 weeks from today, a month from today. And so, but we're in a very fortunate situation as far as that goes, where in other major cities, it might be a little bit different. But really, you cannot take it any differently than day by day as far as how to handle this and how things may progress. As we've all seen here. So.
Gotcha. And I guess for you guys, all three of you guys, we've got some questions in the Q&A. Any questions that jump out to you, ones that you specifically want to answer? Or should I be like Jason Kidd and distribute it to one of you guys?
Well, actually, Mike, while you're figuring that out, I will tell you that too, as far as planning and scenarios, to touch on that last question that we had, is that, we're going through any number of situations at any given time. And so we have done planning, but once again, it's not with any certainty that we will have. But as far as any of the questions, I don't know if you just want to pick one out.
I'm just looking.
Yeah, Mike, I'll take a couple of them. There's a couple that are along the same lines talking. Yeah, there's a couple that talk about, trying to find, partners in the third party or the reseller space, as well as building up relationships and understanding who to work with and things of that nature. I think from my experience of working with a number of, partners and organizations and people, in the space, and again, inclusive of, Ticket for Less, it's building relationships. It's literally that. It's having the conversations. You're going to have plenty of times where you might have an organization or a company reach out to you and ask you or just try to buy right away or whatever. But I think it's doing your due diligence just like you would with any other sort of transaction or partnership. It's not jumping right off and going through and just trying to find that very initial sale. It's truly understanding, almost back to what we were talking about very early on in our conversation today, of understanding what the goals are. Do they align to what Dan talked about? Do they align with the organization? Are their values and their strategies going to be in sync with what you're trying to do on the primary side? I think that's the key to all of this. So whether you're sold out or not, or whether you're trying to get just dipping your toe into the water, it's truly having conversations and asking questions. How can you help me? How can your organization, how can your company benefit us? How can we understand it better? How can our market thrive through your relationship? Because again, there's very few and far between, that every single event is going to be in a sellout mode. But again, if it's not sold out, there's still opportunity, there's still revenue on the table, both from a primary and or a secondary side. So there's always going to be that upside there. So to me, it's kind of, two birds, one stone there of it. It's building those relationships. It's truly just having conversations to understand who are the best partners or who is the best partner that you can align with, and again, that's going to help your goals, your strategies, and your just overall sales plan.
Yeah, and I'll jump in there too.
Okay, go ahead, Ryan.
When I was on the primary side, that was, to Colin's point, that was exactly what it is. We're in a relationship industry. And now more than ever, I would argue that that's more important than it's ever been, to have those strong relationships, and where it's not just a transaction, where you're genuinely getting to know this person, you're genuinely getting to, they're learning about your goals and how they can come alongside of you and help, and you're both moving towards what is the best for your organization. And so for me, that was always my goal. One thing I appreciated about the FLLs on the primary side was I could call if we had something, that we needed to be looked at, and I knew that I was calling their cell phone and they were looking at it and it was answered right away. It wasn't a voicemail. And if it was a quick response to get something handled. And that trust is built just like anything else over time, just like it would be with your team or your fans or anything else. You have to build that trust, and that trust has to be reciprocated from that partner. You're going to know if that partner is not doing things that are the best things for you. And so it has to be shown time over time, whether it's pricing or, to Dan's point earlier, we have calls with our partners where we're talking through sales and what the goal is. And we've had times where we've had partners that have said, we really need to hold the price. And maybe that's not the best decision for us, but it's the best decision for them. And we're able to move in a way that benefits them. I saw it my first week when I was here with a partner. And so, I saw it from the primary side. And again, it takes time, but anyone that wants to have that conversation, I can drop, our emails. You can follow up with us. We want to have that conversation with you. We want to get to know you, and we want to have it honestly, to where it makes sense, it doesn't make sense, whatever. But we want to come alongside of you, and we want to make sure that, it's got the best interest for everybody involved.
And I'll jump in too.
Oh, sorry, go ahead,
Mike.
Dan.
Okay, I was going to say, when it comes down to it, is that obviously, as we've all said, and I think Colin touched on it more earlier, was how much it's evolved from a relationship standpoint. What he just said is that it wasn't always that way, and so understanding exactly the challenges that Ryan and his team faces on a daily basis are completely different than what we do on the primary side. And one of the biggest benefits is, as you see, and you've seen it a lot, become the norm a lot more, is people like Ryan moving from the primary side to the secondary side, having the understanding of what we deal with on a daily basis. But the importance from our side is that we're trying to make sure that we're fully understanding what kind of challenges our partners are going through every single day. And right now in this climate, it's a little bit easy to understand what challenges they're facing, but on a regular season when things are a little bit more normal, understanding what is the challenge for this game or this week or this homestand or whatever it may be is an important part of what we do. We truly look at it as a partnership. And if our relationship is not in good standing, then we're not going to accomplish our goals on the primary side. And we're going to constantly be competing with the pricing through all the other channels that people can buy tickets on.
And it's working with someone on good and bad games too. It's not just the games that, let's take, Dan, it's not just when the Yankees are in town. It's not just for Colin when Duke or North Carolina are in town for basketball or Clemson for football. A holistic partnership is helping across the board. And so if someone's calling you saying, great, 100 seats for your best games, and I want them at the lowest price, that's not helpful. That's not part of the process. Like, it's not how this works. Like, let's have an honest conversation of how we can help across the board, good and bad games, and really grow together. We all have games that are tough. We all have games that are great. Understanding that it's not just when things are good and that partner shows up and calls. To me, that's another way you're going to know that you're having those calls, you're adjusting weekly to what's going on, and you're growing with that partner together in no matter what the game is.
Awesome. I think that's a great way to wrap things up. Ryan, I saw you typed in your email address and Justin's email address. So for anyone in the chat that wants to talk more to our friends at Tickets for Less, certainly feel free to reach out to Ryan and Justin. Dan and Colin, what's the best way for people to contact you if they want to network and get to know you guys more?
The same thing. I'll type my email in the chat as well. Feel free if there's any additional questions that we haven't touched on, or again, if there's anything else that somebody wants to bounce off, you can. It's a pretty straightforward email though. It's just cchargis@ncsu.edu. Again, I'll type that in the chat. Feel free to reach out. Glad to answer any questions or hop on a call and discuss.
Yeah, I'll do the same, or if you want to LinkedIn, you can do that as well, but I'll put my email in there as well.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, guys. I guess before we sign off, for anyone that's listening, as far as what's coming on the Clubhouse, we have 2 webinars coming next week. One hosted by Josh Belkoff, one hosted by Kevin Clammer. So check out our site and see what the upcoming webinars are. As I see Colin and Dan typed in their email addresses. So if you want to reach out to those guys, or Ryan and Justin, reach out to them as well. And then as far as other things in the Clubhouse, you know, I know that most people on here are probably free members, but we're adding more and more value for the paid membership. We're constantly adding new training videos from the folks at SBS. So from Bob, Kevin, and Josh, we're adding some more content for the paid membership. We're going to be doing at least 1 webinar a month for just paid members, and then we're always adding to our mentor network. So definitely check out and see what's going on there if you want to be a paid member. And then for Ryan at Tickets for Less, like I mentioned to start this broadcast, we partnered with Ryan and Justin and Adam. So look out for more content from those folks. We're going to have a blog at some point in the next few months, and then another webinar. So if you've got topics that you want to talk about on the secondary side, feel free to either reach out to myself. I'll type in my email address too. I guess that's hypocritical to ask for you guys and not for my own. So I'll type it in mine as well. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. Mike Rudner, in case it doesn't say, it says SBS in Clubhouse. So my name is Mike Rudner if you don't know that already. And that's about it. I think that's it on our end. Thanks, Colin, Dan, and certainly thanks to Ryan at Tickets for Less for sponsoring this webinar. It's been a great discussion, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.
And for everyone listening, stay safe, hopefully avoid coronavirus, and enjoy the rest of your Thursday and the rest of your week and weekend. Take care, everyone.